Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Home and the Reverend Lang Lim. This is Pandamix, Healing Conversations in Between Times. In this episode, we're going to explore and uncover the sacred dimension of our beings. And so, where to begin?
Yeah, the sacred dimension, we mean our sacred source, our secret source.
Our sacred source.
Sacred, as in holy, divine, and the source is a place of origin. But sometimes it sounds like the secret source. And I think it is also our secret source.
Yes.
Or what Manfred Halpern would have called also our sacred depth. One way to think about the sacred is that we all have an interiority. I have an inner life, as you have an inner life. You, Home, all of us have an inner life. And this interiority is really as vast as the exterior world of the universe that we see. I mean, here we are by the ocean, where you look at the ocean and it's mysterious and it's deep and it's vast, and there's so much that's actually unknown. So this signals that the world we live in exteriorly has so much unknown, and so much inside of us is unknown. So when we talk about, it's good to set up the terms of conversation, when we talk about the sacred source or the secret source inside, we do mean anything from kind of like our artistic self, where we have inspirations for this and that, and to the more archetypal forces at work in our unconscious that may come up in our dreams or in our desires, to changes of states of consciousness that comes with meditation, shamanic experiences, to breath work, medicine work, to places, to mystical, transcendent, ecstatic experiences of merger and unity. But why important to include the sacred or secret phase of our being in all of this? Because the sacred has been misused, abused, misunderstood, and also in many ways neglected. So I think we want to introduce a way to think about it, to talk about it.
And then I also invite people to have an experience of it just purely being fully present. So as you're listening to us back and forth, we invite you into the presence of your being, your body, noticing what it's like to feel your feet on the ground, noticing the breath, noticing what it's like to be fully present. And to me, that's also a pathway into the sacred.
And also noticing what's going on interiorly, not just your critical thoughts of whether you agree or disagree, but what other spontaneous images come up, and the free associations that come up, that's provoked, touched. That's all about all of us touching the sacred in us. And it's important to do that. And to mostly, my stake in this is that we call it sacred and not just your interior, because it signals that something incredibly powerful is at work. And when we are in the presence of something so powerful, then what it calls forth from us, it's deep respect. So a
kind of reverence.
A reverence is something positive, I think, devoted, but one can also just be neutral. And the neutral part is, I have to respect that you have this deep, vast interiority right? The mysterium tremendum ex fascinans. I love dropping these words, from Otto Rudolph about the mysteriously powerful, fascinating, and horrifying that I know is in me and in you. And then I have to respect that in me too. And to say that the respect means two things, right? I think we hold the view, I do, that whatever is God in me is not turning me into a robot. Nor is this God or sacred in me a genie that I can control.
Oh, I just wish for this and wish for that.
Yeah, if you wish for this and this for that in a kind of this way that quite a few people in the world do operate, including in the West, it is a kind of superstition, but behind it actually is the wish to control this vast power because you have the name of this God, in the name of Buddha or Jesus or whatever. So that's been one way to control the power or to feel yourself controlled by it. But we want to encourage this idea, and it is an idea, it is a map, to say we're actually in a co-creative relationship with it. It's just an illustration of how powerful our sacred depths are, or the sacred secret sources. Just really think about a piece of cloth, rectangular, that has colors on it, right?
And some
it could
shapes.
be cheap, and some shapes. Right? And this colored cloth can be really cheap. It could be old, it could be frayed. But people will die and kill each other for what this cloth represents. And not only for what it represents, even in the battle, people would just, well, we're talking about soldiers now, right? Running to save this piece of cloth from being taken by the enemy. And what we're talking about here is a flag. And it's just a piece of cloth, but that it can evoke, provoke, induce so much in us is testimony, in my view, that it taps into these larger forces. And whatever name you want to give it, you can call it nationalism, love of country. It doesn't capture that it touches into this mysterium tremendum ex fascinans, right?
So these are symbols, symbolic, sacred symbols, the flags, the Christian cross,
The Buddha.
the image of the Buddha.
Yeah. Although not to make too fine a point, when we say a symbol, there's still a detachment, right? We can say this is a symbol of the crocodile god. And in some ways, it's still separate. But really, for some people, this can actually be the God itself. So even the words that we use blurs. And I think it's helpful to say, is it a symbol? Is it a sign? We want to be careful to say, so
Not
it's
just
not
ordinary symbol, but a sacred symbol. People devoted themselves to these
which
symbols.
makes it almost the very thing itself. So it's helpful to sort of think of something contemporary, which is the French cartoon magazine called Charlie Hebdo, that has twice now put up pictures of the Prophet Muhammad, and it has, it makes fun of the Prophet Muhammad. And secularist Westerners are kind of almost taken by surprise that there are people in the world who believe in blasphemy and will get so riled up, including murder. And we're not here condoning the murder at all. We're just trying to explain that symbol is literally the place of deep affection and connection to what is sacred for people. And when you don't respect that process is so alive and at work, and you deface it because you have a different system of belief that draws upon your own sacred source, but don't respect that process is taking place. So there is this interiority, and to give it some vocabulary. And I've been thinking about how to help people with this vocabulary since I had grown up very much as a Christian fundamentalist. in which the Bible was the literal word of God, and everything was taken literally, meaning this is it. And I came to realize actually the Bible is the word of God. It's not like God there. The Bible is simply a map. It's a map guiding and inviting us to the experience of the territory. And the territory is the sacred source. It's sort of like, going to a restaurant to eat. That's the primary experience. Then you can write the Saturday food review of it and comment about it, and that's the map, the guide. And we can end up arguing about which food review section is better than which food review, whether Michelin guide is better than New York Times guide. But actually the point of all of this is go eat, right? Go taste.
Yes. We can argue about the menus or people who talk about the food, but until we taste the food itself, then we don't actually have yet the experience of what it feels like to eat that food. Same with the sacred. And so then the question is how to taste, how to experience the sacred depth.
Right, how to experience the sacred depth. So in many ways, of course, the sacred depth, our secret source, is already always here with us. It's in some ways becoming aware of it. And this is where the maps are helpful, and to know when they're also unhelpful. So the maps mean, for example, what you get from the world's religious traditions, the books, right? That's maps. Now, I know some people are going to be offended by that because for them it's literally the thing, so I apologize, but I'm proposing that we think of them as maps, really important maps. And maps are guides. Maps are invitations. My experience with maps was that when I was an undergraduate at Princeton, I took a summer to go to Alaska to join an international youth expedition called Operation Raleigh. And we were in Alaska for 3 months. And within that time, I took a group of 7 people to trek across central Alaska. And we had a map of the Wrangell St. Elias Range. Well, when we arrived, we realized that the map was not accurate. In many ways, we said, my goodness, the map is no good. First, the magnetic north had changed from when it was first published. But the rivers were just not there. There were rivers that we actually saw that was not on the map, big rivers on the map that had dried up. That was because the territory of experience is so vast, it can't be captured in a map, and it's changing and it's dynamic. So what was the map good for? Well, it pointed the direction. It's kind of like there is going to be sort of a river there and not a mountain there. But other than that, you have to walk and find your way through this adventure and sense your way through. For us, it was rivers and glacial outwash and, But the important thing about maps is not whether they're accurate or not. It's that they are an invitation to go explore. Yes.
I mean, I can already imagine some of you watching probably thinking, well, maybe that was before Google Maps, because now you could see the territory from satellite, and at the same time, it's not the same experience until you walk using Google Maps or whatever, but you walk the path, walk the streets, experience what creatures, who are these humans that are living in this territory, what's the temperature and what's the landscape.
And the smell.
And move through it.
Yes. And what it does for you in the moment as you move through it. I just want to raise that moving through it, and we've almost lost that with so much of this representation on Google and social media. It's just the intimacy of the amazement of the encounter. the amazement of the actual encounter.
So watching a video of the ocean is not the same as swimming in the ocean.
When your entire body and being is in it.
I'm just aware that I could see the ocean waves in front of me and the sound of the ocean. And I only see the surface of the ocean, but what is the depth of this ocean? I don't know.
Yeah. So, for you, Home, I'm curious, what's your relationship, with the sacred, with maps and with territory?
I grew up going to French Catholic school, coming home, worship our ancestors
In Vietnam.
in Vietnam.
So people know.
And I really was a believer of Jesus, of Buddha, of all the gods in the kitchen and all of that, right? And I do remember the experience of being lost in the middle of the ocean on our escape from Vietnam to the US. I shared some of these stories earlier in the previous episodes, so I won't go into that now. But I do remember the experience being lost in the middle of the ocean, and then somewhere in that 19 days, I had the experience of looking at the waves coming, and the waves were so huge, and I thought at any given moment, we would all be crushed and killed. And I remember praying to Jesus, praying to the Buddha, praying to grandfather. And I think somewhere in that whole experience, the exhaustion and the surrender that happened, then suddenly there was a moment where there was no future, there was no past, there was no fear, just pure peace. And I recognized that I am one with the ocean. I am one with all of the suffering of these people around me. And so there was this pure moment of peace or nothingness. And that moment came and then gone. And for years, I didn't remember that experience until something like 15 years later, I was sitting in a 10-day Vipassana meditation course. And on the 9th day of that course, and I remember there was so much pain, and then suddenly I just surrender into the pain, and all the memories of that experience of being on the boat. And then I recognized, wow, that experience is in me, and that I can actually cultivate this experience of awareness, of present moment, no future, no past, just now. And so to me, that is an experience of sacredness. Now, I cannot tell you how you can do that experience. It's your own willingness to explore, to experiment, and then see what happens. So please take a breath with me.
Home, it's interesting you tell these two stories. The first one was, in a sense, spontaneous.
Yes.
And then the second is cultivated. And this is what we are hearing back, right, as we survey the literature and people's experiences, that the internal sacred life, particularly these mystical or noetic states of knowing, can happen spontaneously. People have had that in an accident, in near death.
Or being in love. Love making is an experience.
Yeah, it happens, it can be induced. Childbirth is another one that I've heard mothers say, and what are we hearing people say? This sense of no past, no future, connection with everything else.
Or many people also share experience of witnessing children and seeing how the the aliveness of children also can trigger that experience.
Yes. For people who are interested in this, at least the mystical range within the interiority is that the scientists have actually come up with 6 factors. I find it kind of fascinating that there is a noetic quality, the sense of like, I know, and it's irrefutable, a sense of unity with oneself is unified and sometimes merged with everything else, a sense of deep sacredness, respect, reverence. There's a positive mood. There is the ending of the space-time continuum, right? A transcendence of it, and then a sense of ineffability that you're just speechless. You don't know how to describe it.
I imagine some people have had the experience of walking through nature, or I have had the experience of walking through nature and suddenly just like burst into tears for a reason I cannot explain.
Yes.
I just feel moved deeply.
So in charting this map, which is a language map that we are currently using, you might say there are different styles of maps too. So I think of Julia Cameron's work in her book, The Artist's Way, to prompt people to explore the artistic side as one way to access this deeper patterning.
Or reading poetry. For me, reading poetry can also allow me to access that present moment that poets somehow capture in a few words, and then it triggers something very deep in me.
Yeah, it's almost like reading their words, which is their map for their experience, allows you to enter into the experience itself.
It's like it's an experience of awe, and that's where the word awesome. This is awesome because the experience of awe. Yeah.
And people go, oh my God, that's happening. Meditation and contemplation is now easily available as instructions.
And then also in my own experience, and I know of many other experiences, and also in scientific writing and research now in psychedelic work, shamanic journey, psychedelic experiences can also help opening up different parts of our psyche so that we can tap into tap into this experience that is natural to us. Children experience this.
So the psychedelic is interesting because in most countries, right, those psychoactive substances are banned. They were made illegal in the 1960s and 70s in the United States and then banned around the world. They've come back now in scientific circles for research and therapeutic use. At Johns Hopkins and at NYU, where they have started looking at the use of these substances for the treatment of trauma. And that when we are traumatized or depressed or suicidal, it's because part of the mind, not just the brain, goes into these loops that it cannot get out of. And the substances allow an expansion of consciousness to have really other perspectives. And it's not a thinking perspective, it's a feeling perspective. Just to be open to this entire wideness of this universe in us. And then the healing takes place as the mind shifts around these terrible spiraling thoughts on depression. And so a whole lot of literature coming out of those two places, the book Sacred Knowledge and Michael Pollan's How to Change Your Mind. All these, I think, become invitations to explore. What I'd like to flag is the guardrails. Because for modern people with a high kind of egoic mind, is to have these experiences and then come back and say, I now know, and I now know, and I'm going to tell you what you don't know. And so what the ego has done is to have taken on the powers of the gods and to believe that it is God. and to come back with a guru complex or a messiah complex. And to then, in some sense, all of that vastness is now reduced to my ego. But my little small ego thinks I'm that vastness. So I'm now going to tell you. And this is where the oppression and the fundamentalism and the dogmaticism comes about.
Also the new age woo woo lama lama ding dong. I took some medicine and then I experienced God, so therefore I never have to work again and don't hold a job and just float here and there, and the universe will take care of me. That's only partially true.
Right.
I've went through that myself, so I do remember experience of that.
Fun. And that could be harmless because the only thing you harm is your own life. But there are some real dangers to come back into this material world with this ego inflation. And so the other part of the guardrails is the best part of the traditional religions say, how do we know that what we have come back to this life with is worthwhile? And the worthwhile is really how you and I, as friends, as a married couple, work through our relationship, how you and I work through, and this is the political dimension. Can we, in this world, live with each other? Because if we can't bear the fruits in this life of what we have gained, then this is of naught. And here's where Confucius says, wait, we have 3 more minutes.
All right,
so let
for
people know we have 3 more minutes. But Confucius said, he was asked, what about the gods and the spirits? And he said, why do you worry about gods and the spirits when you can't even live with each other? And I think that's a huge ethical guideline. And St. Paul in the Christian tradition said as much, test every spirit, but the fruits is the most important. Is there love, patience, benevolence, forbearance?
Yes, that's a lot. Please take a breath with me. So, the sacred dimension, we can talk for years, but we'll pause here for now. Thank you for listening, and we'll continue to deepen this conversation in the next episode. Thank you. Please take another breath.